I got my head shaved and took a picture of that. I went and got a pedicure because I forgot to bring nail clippers. And, plus it was kind of nice to relax a little bit. I was supposed to have a day off, but it's been email, conference call, email, phone call. Just, there's big stuff happening.
Yeah. What has the tour life been like so far? Is it kind of what you expected it would be, or or is it a little more hectic?
No, it's been fine. Mostly what I care about is, are we reaching with people? Are we building communities? Do we get a chance to engage? And each of the events has been fine. The only mistakes, there was a mic incident at the first one, and apart from that, all the other mistakes on the events have been me, which is exactly what I expected. The venues have been really good overall, and mostly though, just getting a bunch of people to come out. I mean, hundreds of people at different events, and it's nice to get a chance to stand around and talk. When we did the Unholy Trinity tour of Australia, I kind of got a dose for what a 20-day
Right.
away from home thing would be like. And Sarah's been with me, and it's been, she makes it silly easy.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, you need to be here, you need to be there. You need to be here, you need to be there. And I just do what she tells me, and everything works out.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to think about much but the show and the content of what you're talking about. By the way, I'm speaking with Matt Dillahunty. For those of you who cannot recognize his voice, you should be able to by now. Matt, for those of you that don't know, was a former Southern Baptist fundamentalist Christian for 25 years. Now he's a prominent figure in the promotion of secular humanism. And we're here in Toronto because Matt's kind of in the middle part, or kind of getting close to the end of the Canadian leg of his tour. Yeah. And tonight he is going to be sharing the stage with Dr. Jordan Peterson, the clean your room guy. And I have a question for him later. I want him to weigh in on what about my office, because my office is a literal shit show. And I wonder if that falls under the same umbrella.
This is something that I hope to discuss tonight, not necessarily the clean your room thing, because I don't know that I fully understand where this is coming from, and I could certainly see a context in which it's not something specific. Because he is so keen on metaphor, it may be along the lines of, pull the stick out of your own eye before you go accusing your brother, or clean up your own yard first type thing. And somebody told me that it had more to do with, if you're not sure what to do with your life or direction, because evidently he's giving like life advice, start with cleaning your room. I'm not going to fault somebody for cleaning their room. My frustration is that a lot of what I've heard from him seems to be in the category of deepities, which is a phrase coined by Dan Dennett's daughter that he popularized. And basically, it's a statement that sounds really profound, but to the extent that it's profound, it's actually false, and to the extent that it's true, it's trivial. And there's a number of things like that. I'm not that familiar with Jordan, so I'm looking forward to tonight. Mostly, I'm always looking forward to the questions, but I'm hoping there's some discussion so that I can get a better understanding, because on a few occasions, people send me clips where he's answered a question about, God or morality or Christianity or whatever, and I'm left going, I have no idea what his position actually is. And I'm not sure that he does. So,
yeah, I would suspect that most Christians, from what I've seen on Jordan, would not call him a Christian, and they wouldn't claim him for their own.
Well, I would certainly think that, he was asked at one point whether the question about the historicity of Jesus. Did
Right.
Jesus exist as a historical figure? And I think he gave some answer like it would take him, he'd need to investigate that for about 3 years. And while I certainly can't speak for every Christian or former Christian, that's kind of a deal breaker.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's about anything, it's about a confidence that Jesus was divine and lived and died and was resurrected to provide salvation for people. And if you remove any portion of that, I don't know on what grounds you might be able to call yourself a Christian. But that's for him to sort out, because I don't get to decide what a true Christian is, at least not anymore.
No, I mean, and it seems like everyone has their own version of what a true Christian is. So even a group of people pinning that down and agreeing is...
Oh, yeah. The First Baptist Church has one thing to say. The Second Baptist Church has another thing to say. The Presbyterian Church, the Catholic Church, and we're still within just Christianity. Then you broaden out to other religions.
Yeah. Well, when you were practicing, there must have been points where you disagreed with some things that your pastor was saying, or some people connected to you in the religious community.
Yeah, certainly when I was younger, I don't know that there was that much of that. It was basically you go and, the pastor kind of tells you stuff, and he's the one who's spiritually wise, so you just kind of take it. And every now and then, my mom would have ideas that, what this church is teaching isn't biblical, and what this church is teaching isn't biblical. And as I got older, I kind of formed my own thoughts on a number of things, but I stayed pretty close to orthodoxy. By the time I got to the point where I was having serious objections, I was already on a path out, even though I didn't know it.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many things in Southern Baptism. Did you ever get tied into the talking in tongues, or were any of your family members ever tied in with that?
So my uncle was a medical missionary, and I think that he spoke in tongues. That's mostly a Pentecostal thing, and not really a Southern Baptist thing. And it used to be, at a time, it was more popular to call it the charismatic churches rather than the Pentecostal churches, and you'd have dancing and pew jumping and speaking in tongues. And it reminds me of a strange story, because to me, certainly the Bible talks about the gift of tongues. How that's interpreted is very different, whether it's I'm suddenly able to speak fluent Spanish in order to share the gospel, or if it's speaking in heavenly tongues, and, I'm not going to dig in on that today. But a friend of mine, his best friend was a Pentecostal, and their church in particular would have the 12 and 13-year-olds kind of come up to the front of the church. And to become a church member, you had to demonstrate that you had been filled with the Holy Spirit, which included speaking with tongues. And he leaned over to the preacher, and he's like, I have no idea what to do. And the preacher said, just fake it, we all do. Now, I can't say that the story's true. It could just be a joke. It could be an anecdote that got exaggerated. I find it difficult to believe that a preacher would say that to somebody, although in the heat of the moment, maybe they would. But what I do know is that it's a little bit wrong, in the sense that while there are probably loads of people who do fake it, there are other people who are not engaged in intentional deception. Even back to the 19th century, the book Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds, and you see this in voodoo ritual tribes, and you see this at Peter Popoff events and other ministers. They'll wave their hands and everybody falls over. Not everybody there is faking it. It's much the same way that there's a cool experiment that I love to cite, where they put a bunch of actors in an elevator, and they're all facing the back wall instead of the door. And one person gets in, and they face the door like normal, and eventually they get so uncomfortable that they turn around and face the back wall like everybody else. People are prone to conform to varying degrees, and you can set up 10 chairs in a room and have 3 actors filling out paperwork. And, you ring a bell and they stand up. You ring the bell and they sit down. Now they're paid actors. And then you gradually introduce new people into the room. They will fall in line and stand up and sit down. And if they don't, you remove those people from the room. And eventually you can fill all the chairs, remove the paid actors. And now everybody's standing up or sitting down when the bell goes off, and none of them know why. It's just what they've always done.
Yeah. Like planting a virus.
And so there's aspects of that I think, I can't prove that somebody wasn't actually filled with a supernatural force, but I think the more plausible explanation is that religions play on that type of conformity, or prey on that type of conformity, and the people who are most susceptible to it are the ones that are engaging in it.
Yeah. How have you ever tried speaking in tongues? Like, have you ever tried, like, just, I guess, rambling nonsense, and did it give you any kind of feeling that these people were describing?
Well, some people might say I ramble nonsense all the time. I've never tried to speak in tongues as anything other than, a joke, kind of the mimicry.
Yeah. And it always ends in, oh, Jesus.
Yeah. And but I don't want to make it sound like, I think for some people they don't so much try as it just happens,
right?
Yeah, along with other stuff. And the how and why behind that is certainly interesting. It's interesting from a psychological perspective as well. But I think it's safe to say that there are clearly some people who engage in this in a way that appears to be fakery. And the curious thing for me is that linguists have analyzed people who are supposedly speaking in tongues, and they find no signs of language or grammar. And the people who speak it they can't tell you what they said, they can't translate it. And yet these same people will claim that they got a message from God and they can translate that. But if they babble in tongues, they cannot translate what they said. And the excuse is, well, it's a heavenly language. You're not going to find a grammar or anything else.
Right.
So,
yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I've seen a lot of the quick compilations of these people speaking in this way, and I mean, a lot of people will look at it and say, wow, that is psychotic, but there must be immense pleasure being drawn from what they're doing, or they wouldn't be doing it. So, and it must be this placebo pleasure that is just something that makes them feel good.
Well, on the pleasure front, I mean, it's pretty straightforward to me, because I've been in churches and experienced what I would have at the time said was the Holy Spirit. It's a feeling of elation. Your hair can stand up. You feel euphoric and happy, and everybody around you is basically feeling the same way, and they attribute it to the Holy Spirit, so you do too. It's not like I ever had any evidence that it was the Holy Spirit. And curiously, when I found my way, even before I found my way out of religion, I started recognizing that some of those experiences I could have from engaging in secular activities. If I went and looked at great art, or listened to great music, or even secular music, there were certain songs done certain ways by certain artists would give you that same sense of chills and awe. And that similar experiences, not identical, none of them are identical. I mean, the experience you have from sex or drugs or rock and roll, those are three different experiences that are different but feel similar in, I guess, quality. And they are all similar to the euphoria that I experience. I can't talk about what other people experience, but I don't think I'm incredibly atypical.
Right. So I've heard Jordan Peterson describe life when people ask him, what is life? He describes it and relates it to suffering. Do you see life that way? In a sense, and I'm sure he means it as a metaphor, but is life just a struggle that we have to find ways to move through it?
Are you sure we're talking about Jordan and not Sam Harris?
No, Jordan.
Yeah,
I know.
It
may be something they do agree on.
It's kind of a quick jab. It's a very Buddhist idea that the Buddhism idea is quite a lot about getting rid of suffering or minimizing suffering. This notion that life is suffering, I'd be curious to really get a good grip on what somebody actually means by that. I know, for example, Mother Teresa, if you read like Christopher Hitchens' book, The Missionary Position, which is the perfect title for that, She had almost a fetish with respect to suffering, that suffering was needed and required. It reminds me a little about of the people who would say, "Oh, well, you can't know what good is if you don't recognize evil, or you can't know what pleasure is without recognizing pain." I don't know to what extent. I hopefully after tonight I'll have a better understanding of Jordan's personal theology, assuming we can get to, get beyond the metaphoric truths, which I don't think are true. I mean, I understand that you can inspire people with poetry. You can encourage and embolden people with metaphor and allegory and all these things, and that's great. But I also care about what actually is, what is consistent with reality. And there's a statement somebody sent me that he made that was, I don't think reality is made up of matter. I think it's made up of what matters. And if, in fact, he said that, that is, I mean, there are people who refer to him as the Deepak Chopra of Christianity, and they're basically slamming on him for saying things that sound incredibly deep and profound when they're not. They're deepities, like we discussed before.
Right.
And so I don't know. Maybe in the course of the evening, somebody will ask him about this notion of suffering, because for me, I don't look at life like that at all. Certainly there is suffering as a part of life. Certainly there's pleasure and pain. There's happiness and sadness.
Yeah, of course.
And there's no, as far as I can tell, intrinsic meaning or purpose to life, not like the universe is dictated. This is what life's supposed to be like. There are just the facts of the universe. And I get to give my life whatever meaning and purpose I want. And for me, I want to learn as much as I can about as much as I can. I'd like to be able to share some of that with other people, to help people care about skepticism and humanism, and if there's something better than either skepticism or humanism, to discover that and share that as well. Because as far as we can tell, if there's anything like an afterlife, there's that's a bonus, or maybe, damning, but who knows? There's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can do to investigate it. So I'm stuck dealing with the life I experience. I would like it to be the best life that it can be. I don't buy into notions that, that merely surviving is enough. I want to thrive, and it's not a simple, hedonism. Let me run around and, eat whatever I want and dance and, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may die. It's more of eat, drink, be merry, study, learn, teach, share, help, because you could die any second.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, I worry that people view like a secular worldview. Oh, it doesn't have meaning and purpose. Yeah, it does. Oh, well, you can't be moral. Yeah, you can. Well, you can't have a foundation for moral. Yeah, you can. Well, why isn't your life just joyless? Do you experience awe? Yes, all the time.
We can build scientific models on all of these things. We can build a model that demonstrates more awe in something compared to the other thing, based on just experimenting it.
There's a guy in maybe it was Ottawa who spoke to me afterwards, because he had gone down for the eclipse, and I was in South Carolina for the eclipse, and unfortunately it clouded up right before the eclipse happened. And he was asking me, what was that experience like for me? Did I experience, like incredible awe? And I said, no, I didn't, in part because it clouded up, and in part because I'd, been watching the footage and seen the pictures, and I don't think there was something that would have been special about the eclipse that would have made, like really hit me hard. It would have just been, I'm so glad I got to see that, in reality instead of just on a video screen, and it's cool. But I told him that recently on my Facebook page, I shared a picture or a video that really did strike me with awe. And it's something that, when we go over to the UK at some point, I'd love to see if it's possible to witness it live. And it was a massive flock of starlings doing this dance in the sky,
yeah.
a cloud of them moving in just a mesmerizing pattern right before they all settled down, for the evening. And I bet I've watched that clip 4 or 5 times, and that is for me more of a moment of awe than the eclipse. And I think it has something to do with the fact that I know Dennett has used this particular example in, I believe, Freedom Evolves, and I think Dawkins has used the example of this as well at some point. Those are living things. They're minds. They are acting without any sort of clear leader. Like nobody's directing the dance that they do. We don't understand it. It seems to be a wasteful process. They're using up energy. Maybe they need to get rid of the energy. Maybe they ate too much that day or something. But I watch it and I'm just in awe that this clear, unguided process can produce something orderly and beautiful. And it didn't even occur to me, but somebody on my Facebook page commented, "Oh, they're just like fish," because you see the same sort of schooling and patterning in some
It's
fish.
so true, yeah. And I mean, when I see things like that in nature, and I start thinking about what is making this happen, because it seems illogical, it just makes me think of our pleasure drives driving us towards creating art. And I mean, we know that animals are controlled by their pleasure drives just as we are. So they must be getting immense pleasure out of what they're doing, or they wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, I certainly think that's part of it. I know that the old me would have looked at that through what Seth Andrews has called the God glasses. And it would have been more of, oh, isn't God great? He got these starlings to do something wonderful for our entertainment.
Yeah.
And the truth is, for me, the notion that, like, let's say there was a God who just decided, you know what, I'm going to make the starlings do this wonderful dance just so that humans can on occasion see this and be in awe of how awesome I am. I think that massively diminishes the actual value of what's going on. If there's several pictures on the wall here where we're filming. Somebody built that building. They took a picture of that building. But if it was, let's say, a painting of a flower, that's impressive that somebody can reproduce that. And then you look at an actual flower, and to me, if there was a field, like the wildflowers are out in Texas right now, blue bonnets and Indian blankets and all kinds of things. And we were driving through, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing and beautiful. And if I thought that there was a God who put all that together, it would be diminished. It would be, if God can do anything, then certainly instead of just making a flower that can make me go, oh man, that's really pretty, he could, make a flower that, gave me an orgasm and knocked me over. If you want to, that's so it's kind of like he phoned it in. You can do anything you want, and I'm going to make a flower.
That's what I would plant. Those are the flowers.
The orgasm plants,
yeah,
the poppies.
Yeah. Yeah. So tonight sold out very quickly. So obviously there's a huge interest in hearing this conversation between yourself and Jordan, and we are creating a video of the event, which will be released. Everyone will get an opportunity to see it, and I'm sure it's going to be very popular.
And part of my plan, because I do 3 videos a month for my Patreon thing to kind of pay the mortgage and let me keep traveling around meeting people and stuff. I know that I get back Tuesday night late. Wednesday the 18th is when I try and catch up on all the things that went wrong, like the fact that my credit card got shut off while I was in Canada, and now I've got to activate the new one. But the 3 videos that I'm planning on doing, one is going to be a retrospective on the Canada tour for Magic and Skepticism, to talk about meeting people, the questions they had, and things that I think might be helpful to the audience. The second one is going to be a look back at the conversation with Jordan and my thoughts on what happened, or what's getting ready to happen. But since I'm talking about the future, it'll be the past. And the third one is going to be the second in the Women in the Bible series. I did one that was about the worth of women in general. And I think we're going to do, Beth is helping me on this so that I don't screw it all up. But I think we're going to do like Even Lilith as the next one.
The worth of women in the Bible, is the answer basically shit in the end?
In some cases, it's half to 2/3 of a man when they're actually putting prices on it.
Yeah.
But a lot of it came down to, women aren't often mentioned in the Bible except as somebody's wife, somebody's mistress, somebody's handmaid, or somebody that they need to use as an example for something. And one of the key things is, can they own property? Can they inherit anything? They're certainly not anywhere on an equal footing with men. But it's the little things that people often don't think about. Everything's written from a male perspective. There's passages there of what to do if you suspect your wife of infidelity. There are no passages about what to do if you suspect your husband of infidelity.
Right.
Certainly there's no passages of what to do if you suspect your same-sex partner of infidelity.
Yeah.
And when you look at the Bible, I mean, barrenness is the big issue that we kind of addressed because it was used as a punishment all the time. And not just a punishment for what the woman might have done, but if there's a king who's disruptive, all the women in his kingdom are going to be barren. So everybody else is getting punished for what some dude did, which was funny. I say funny in the amusing sense, not that it was, actually funny.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thanks for chatting with me quickly today.
Sure.
We now it's time to kind of get ready for the event. We're going to go have dinner with Jordan, and his wife, I think, is going to join us.
Oh, that'd be great.
And and then we'll head over to the theater, and I will be bringing Jordan on the podcast. Thank you all very much, and let art and science inspire.